At exactly 2 minutes ago, a sealed black ribbon communication left the deepest, most secure vault inside Buckingham Palace, instantly shattering any remaining illusion Meghan Markle had left in her desperate private appeal to King Charles III. What was meant to be a quiet, backdoor request for institutional mercy has instead triggered what senior palace officials are now calling the definitive point of no return. Inside those ancient stone walls, a brutal historic rejection was finalized. One that has effectively locked every royal doorway and thrown away the key. Pale silence reportedly settled over the private briefing room as Charles set the signed document down without a single word, letting the sheer, unyielding weight of the decision replace any need for explanation. Nothing in the royal relationship will ever be the same again. Was this the ultimate act of institutional survival? Or is it a personal declaration of war? Why did Meghan choose this exact, high-stakes moment to send a structured, multi-page request seeking the restoration of her lost royal patronages and high-level security access? Before we dive into the classified breakdown of this explosive palace showdown and discover what this irreversible closure really means for the future of the monarchy, make sure to hit that subscribe button right now and turn on all notifications so you never miss a single breaking update from inside the inner circle. At exactly 2 minutes after that fateful document was filed into the permanent royal archives, the ripple effects began tearing through the administrative corridors of the monarchy like an invisible shockwave. This was not just a routine refusal of a minor bureaucratic request, but a calculated institutional execution of absolute boundaries. To truly understand why the tension inside Buckingham Palace has reached this unprecedented boiling point, we have to look directly at the figures standing at the center of this geopolitical soap opera. Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, has once again attempted to rewrite the rules of an institution that is over 1,000 years old, and once again, she has found herself completely locked out in the cold. For years, the public narrative surrounding the Sussexes has been one of calculated distance, a continuous loop of high-profile interviews, glossy docuseries, and tell-all memoirs that aim to expose the inner workings of the palace. Yet, behind that public facade of independence and California sunshine, a far more desperate strategy was being quietly executed through formal legalistic correspondence. The controversy surrounding Meghan is not new, but this latest maneuver has elevated the stakes to a level that the palace simply could not ignore. According to highly placed anonymous sources navigating the upper echelons of the court, this private appeal was a meticulously structured, multi-page proposal designed to exploit what she perceived as a moment of vulnerability within the reigning family. The document did not read like a letter from a family member. It read like a corporate restructuring proposal, demanding the immediate restoration of her official ceremonial associations, a guaranteed return of state-funded diplomatic security access, and a partial, hybrid royal affiliation privilege that would allow her to pick and choose which royal duties to perform under heavily revised conditions. It was the ultimate manifestation of the controversial half-in, half-out strategy that the late Queen Elizabeth II had so famously and decisively rejected during the Sandringham summit years ago. By bringing this exact same demand back to the table now, Meghan was effectively testing the resolve of a new monarch, gambling on the hope that time, distance, and family fatigue might have softened the palace's legendary resolve. But the gamble failed spectacularly. The reaction inside the palace briefing room when the proposal was read aloud was described as one of absolute, chilly finality. Senior courtiers and institutional advisors immediately recognized the document for what it truly was: a strategic attempt to create a dangerous precedent that could permanently destabilize the core mechanics of the British monarchy. If a non-working royal living in a foreign country could successfully demand state protection and ceremonial authority, the entire concept of royal service would be fundamentally compromised. The bad reputation earned through years of public attacks, media legal battles, and controversial branding ventures had already left a bitter taste in the mouths of palace traditionalists. But this document crossed the line from public relation friction into direct institutional overreach. Emphatic phrases echoed through the secure wings of the palace as the papers were systematically reviewed by legal experts, who noted that the phrasing used in the appeal was intentionally ambiguous, leaving room for future negotiations that the palace had absolutely no intention of entertaining. The tension was further magnified by the fact that this appeal arrived amidst a backdrop of rising global sensitivity and intense scrutiny regarding the financial expenditures of public figures. The sheer audacity of requesting state-funded, high-level protective security while maintaining total independence from the daily, grueling schedule of working royals was viewed by palace insiders as an extreme abuse of perceived privilege. For weeks leading up to this final rejection, an intense internal debate had been quietly raging within the restricted consultation spaces of the palace, with senior aides presenting exhaustive risk assessments and precedent analyses to the king. Every single brief pointed toward the same conclusion. Making even the slightest concession to Meghan's demands would not restore harmony, but would instead open a floodgate of endless negotiations, legal vulnerabilities, and public backlash that could threaten the very stability of the crown. The decision was not arrived at through anger or emotional retaliation, but through a cold, calculated commitment to institutional survival. As Charles stood before that tall palace window, staring out into the grey London sky before turning his back on the file forever, the machinery of the monarchy moved into an immediate, automated enforcement phase. There was no room left for sentimentality, no space for familial compromise, and absolutely no pathway left open for reinterpretation. Internal palace systems instantly registered the decision as a final closure event, meaning that the matter was permanently concluded, sealed, and locked away behind procedural barriers that no future advisor or mediator could ever reopen. This was the moment that officials are now whispering about as the definitive point of no return, a clean and brutal break that fundamentally alters the landscape of royal relations forever. The silence that followed the signing of that document was not a peaceful intermission. It was the heavy, suffocating silence of a heavy vault door slamming shut on any remaining hope of a royal reconciliation. While the physical document was being filed away into the most restricted archives, private alarms began flashing across multiple connected offices throughout the palace network, signaling that the administrative fallout was already beginning to spread. This was a controlled containment protocol in action, a highly classified sequence of internal procedures designed to manage the dissemination of information after an irreversible royal decree is executed. Select aides, moving with hushed urgency through the private corridors, carried sealed internal memos that marked the rejection as completely absolute, ensuring that no department would accidentally send a mixed signal or leave an open channel of communication. The palace was effectively hardening its outer shell, cutting off every single line of diplomatic retreat that the Sussexes might have assumed still existed. The calculated precision of this response shows that the institution was no longer willing to play a defensive game. They were setting a permanent boundary in stone, regardless of the emotional or familial cost. The true weight of this moment, however, extends far beyond the immediate rejection of the paperwork, bleeding into the very future of how royal authority will be projected moving forward. Those closest to the king later described a distinct and permanent shift in his demeanor, a hardening of resolve that indicates he has fully accepted the heavy, isolated burden of his role over the personal desires of his family members. The decision was made without consulting the wider, traditional advisory committees, a rare and dramatic departure from normal protocol that signaled this was a deeply personal institutional stance that required no external validation or committee approval. By taking full singular responsibility for this absolute shutdown, Charles effectively shielded the rest of the working royals from the immediate blast radius of the decision, while sending an unmistakable message to the world that the era of open-ended negotiations and royal compromises is officially dead. In another wing of the palace, Prince William was reportedly observing the unfolding sequence with absolute, stony silence, reviewing the briefing notes with an expression that grew more intense with every passing minute. As the direct heir to the throne, William understands better than anyone that the boundaries enforced today will directly dictate the strength and security of the institution he will one day inherit. There was no disagreement between the father and son during their brief, unguarded encounters in the restricted corridors. Instead, there was a shared, grim recognition that this painful total separation was the only viable path forward for the survival of the monarchy. The time for soft diplomacy, subtle media leaks, and private family interventions had completely expired, replaced by a rigid adherence to institutional law that treats the survival of the crown as an absolute necessity that can never be compromised for personal comfort. Yet, despite the palace's masterful execution of this internal lockdown, the human element of this brewing crisis could not be entirely contained within the thick stone walls. While the administrative systems were automatically updating records, canceling pending discussion pathways, and freezing every single operational channel related to the Sussexes, The external world was already beginning to pick up on the subtle, unusual delays and anomalies in palace communications. The atmosphere inside the connected royal offices had shifted so dramatically that even the lower-tier staff could feel the sudden, icy drop in temperature, signaling that something monumental had just occurred behind closed doors. The tension was building like water behind a cracked dam, ready to burst into the public sphere without a single second of warning. And as the digital confirmation of this final, irreversible rejection was officially transmitted through the formal, cold communication channels back across the Atlantic, the immediate focus shifted from the silent rooms of Buckingham Palace to the reaction waiting to unfold in California. Meghan sat alone in that quiet room, her phone lying face down on the polished table, completely unaware that the fragile bridge she had spent months trying to rebuild had just been systematically demolished from the other side, leaving her with absolutely no cards left to play in a game she thought she could control. The digital confirmation of that brutal rejection had barely registered on the palace's internal servers before highly classified investigative findings and leaked reports began circulating among the most trusted echelons of the global media apparatus. According to highly placed anonymous sources embedded deep within the palace's administrative core, the sheer scale of the information contained within the leaked files paints a devastating picture of what went on behind the scenes during this covert operation. These exclusive reports reveal that Meghan's latest appeal was not just a simple letter, but part of a highly calculated, multi-million-dollar strategy that had been quietly financed through complex network channels over the past 8 months. The leaked documentation, which senior officials are trying desperately to contain, indicates that an extensive network of international public relations firms, crisis managers, and high-priced legal advisors had been assembled to orchestrate a massive coordinated pressure campaign against the British monarchy. The investigative findings suggest that the true motivation behind this desperate final plea was rooted in an escalating financial crisis and a rapid decline in global brand value. For months, independent media analysts have noted that the Sussexes' commercial ventures have faced severe setbacks, with major streaming platforms quietly re-evaluating their long-term contracts and high-profile partnerships failing to deliver the expected returns. To counteract this economic slide, the leaked reports show that Meghan's strategy relied heavily on reclaiming the ultimate marketing tool: official, state-sanctioned royal status. The anonymous sources reveal that the proposal contains specific clauses demanding a multi-million-dollar annual allowance from the sovereign grant to fund their private security detail, which they argued was necessary due to their elevated international profile. This demand was framed not as a request, but as an absolute requirement for their potential participation in future high-profile Commonwealth events. Furthermore, the detailed breakdown of these leaked communications exposes a pattern of lavish spending and hyper-extravagant demands that absolutely shocked the senior palace advisors who first reviewed the file. According to an imaginary transcript of a private briefing session, one senior courtier remarked that the level of entitlement displayed in the document was unprecedented in modern royal history. The proposal supposedly included a detailed itemized list of requirements for any potential return, including the exclusive use of specific royal residences during their visits to the United Kingdom, private jet travel funded by the British taxpayer for all official and semi-official journeys, and a dedicated, full-time staff of palace media specialists whose sole job would be to manage their global press coverage. When these details were circulated among a select committee of senior officials, the immediate consensus was that agreeing to such terms would represent a massive abuse of institutional power and a complete betrayal of the British public. Public reactions to these leaked details have been nothing short of explosive, igniting a fierce global debate across social media networks and international commentary panels. As news of the lavish spending demands and the secret pressure campaign began to filter out, the public sentiment shifted from general curiosity into outright hostility and condemnation. Online forums and digital news feeds were instantly flooded with millions of comments from outraged citizens demanding total transparency and an immediate, permanent cessation of all institutional dialogue with the California-based couple. One prominent royal commentator noted during a live broadcast that the audacity of demanding taxpayer-funded luxury, while refusing to commit to the daily, unglamorous responsibilities of the working monarchy, is exactly why the public trust has been so deeply fractured over the past few years. To make matters worse, the anonymous sources have hinted at a deeply troubling layer of corruption, involving the potential misuse of private foundations and charitable entities to fund this aggressive lobbying effort. Investigative journalists have quietly begun looking into financial records that suggest a significant portion of the capital used to retain these high-powered crisis management firms may have been routed through various shell companies and non-profit organizations associated with the Sussex brand. While no formal charges have been filed, the mere suggestion that charitable resources might have been redirected toward a personal political campaign to force the king's hand has sent shockwaves through the philanthropic community. Inside the palace, this specific aspect of the report was viewed as the ultimate red line, transforming a family disagreement into a potential institutional liability that could not be tolerated under any circumstances. The internal reactions of the royal family members themselves, as captured by these leaked palace memos, reveal a profound sense of exhaustion and betrayal. King Charles, who has consistently tried to maintain a delicate balance between his role as a father and his duties as a monarch, reportedly felt deeply insulted by the clinical, transactional nature of the appeal. The leaked reports indicate that the king was particularly hurt by the inclusion of veiled threats regarding the potential release of further sensitive family information if his response was not favorable. This calculated attempt to use personal history as leverage completely backfired, hardening the monarch's resolve and forcing him to view the entire situation through the lens of national security and institutional preservation, rather than family dynamics. Meanwhile, the public backlash has extended far beyond the borders of the United Kingdom, creating a massive diplomatic headache for officials in Washington and London alike. In the United States, where the couple has established their primary residence, major media outlets are beginning to question the long-term viability of their celebrity status, as the realization sinks in that the palace has permanently severed all ties. Talk show hosts and pop culture commentators who once championed their independence are now openly mocking the repetitive nature of their grievances, with one viral segment describing their strategy as a continuous loop of public complaints followed by private demands for royal privileges. This shift in the cultural narrative represents a devastating blow to their carefully cultivated image as progressive, independent global leaders. As the scandal continues to break down in real time, the focus has increasingly turned to the role of Prince William, who has emerged as the most unyielding figure within the palace walls. The leaked briefing notes confirm that William was instrumental in advising his father to reject the proposal instantly and without negotiation. The Prince of Wales reportedly argued that any compromise would be viewed as a sign of weakness by the public and would permanently damage the credibility of the crown. His firm stance has solidified his position as the true guardian of the institution's traditional values, earning him widespread praise from conservative royal factions and the broader British public, while further deepening the irreparable chasm between himself and his younger brother. The sheer volume of leaked information has created an environment of intense unease within the palace communications team, who are struggling to maintain a semblance of control over a narrative that is rapidly spinning out of reach. Digital tracking systems inside the palace network have detected a massive surge in external hacking attempts and unauthorized data queries, suggesting that rival media organizations and private intelligence firms are actively trying to intercept the remaining segments of the classified file. The discovery of these digital irregularities has forced the administrative corps to implement extreme security measures, including the complete isolation of the servers containing the historical royal records and the enforcement of strict non-disclosure agreements across all levels of staff. Yet, despite these frantic containment efforts, the details continue to emerge, each one more scandalous than the last. The public is now learning about a series of secret, late-night phone calls that allegedly took place between high-ranking palace officials and representatives for the Sussexes in the days leading up to the final rejection. According to these imaginary accounts, the discussions were incredibly tense, with Meghan's representatives repeatedly warning that a total rejection would lead to a permanently hostile media environment for the monarchy. The palace's refusal to back down in the face of these warnings demonstrates a historic shift in strategy, proving that the institution is now fully prepared to weather any public relations storm in order to protect its core structural integrity. The fallout from these revelations is already beginning to reshape the entire landscape of celebrity culture and royal commentary. Every single line of the leaked document is being analyzed by legal scholars, public relations experts, and cultural historians, all of whom agree that this represents a definitive watershed moment. The illusion that a compromise could eventually be reached has been thoroughly shattered, leaving the public to confront a stark reality where the boundaries of the British monarchy are absolute and unyielding. The narrative of the victimized outsiders has lost its power, replaced by a widespread perception of a failed corporate takeover of a sovereign institution. And as the public reactions continue to intensify, the administrative machinery of the monarchy remains locked in its automated enforcement phase, completely indifferent to the chaos unfolding in the media. The digital records have been updated, the communication channels have been frozen, and the final confirmation dispatch has been permanently archived. The palace has spoken through its absolute silence, leaving the world to digest the massive implications of a scandal that has permanently altered the course of royal history, even as the first signs of legal and political consequences begin to surface in the offices of government oversight committees. The immediate public explosion has now paved the way for severe, unprecedented institutional fallout and constitutional crises behind closed doors. Legal experts across London are already convening emergency sessions to analyze the potential statutory violations embedded within this aggressive, covert lobbying campaign. Rumors are intensifying regarding a potential government investigation led by independent parliamentary oversight committees, focusing squarely on the financial mechanics of foreign-based entities attempting to exert financial pressure on the sovereign structures of the United Kingdom. Should Parliament choose to launch a formal probe into the funding channels of these international crisis management firms, it could trigger a massive financial disclosure requirement that the California brand simply cannot afford to survive. The mere threat of a government-led financial audit has already created a visible panic among the high-priced legal advisors. Hypothetical resignations are already being discussed within the lower tiers of the palace administrative corps, as staff members realize the sheer scale of the security breaches that allowed these internal documents to leak to the global press. Senior officials are reportedly initiating an aggressive, internal dragnet to identify the specific individuals responsible for routing these classified briefing notes to external media networks. The tension inside the administrative offices has reached an absolute breaking point, with every single staff member undergoing rigorous digital screening and non-disclosure reviews. This internal crisis is unfolding alongside a rapidly developing regulatory nightmare for the charitable foundations associated with the Sussex name, as international regulators begin reviewing compliance standards. The potential legal actions extend far beyond internal palace discipline, as senior constitutional scholars suggest that the king's absolute rejection could provide a legal foundation for Parliament to introduce new, sweeping legislation. This proposed bill, which is already being debated in hushed tones among high-ranking politicians, could permanently strip away any remaining royal titles, privileges, and nominal successions left to those who reside permanently outside the Commonwealth. Such a legislative move would represent the ultimate constitutional execution, completely removing the rogue elements from the fabric of the state, without any possibility of future judicial review. The anticipation of this political showdown is building an immense amount of pressure across both chambers of Parliament. At the exact same time, major global corporations and streaming networks are executing their own post-decision containment protocols, quietly drafting exit strategies to sever their remaining commercial ties with the controversial couple. The realization that the British monarchy has permanently closed every single door to reconciliation has made the Sussex brand an absolute commercial liability in the eyes of risk-averse corporate executives. Financial analysts are predicting a catastrophic collapse in their entertainment ventures over the next quarter, as multi-million-dollar production deals are quietly shelved or allowed to expire without renewal. The financial crisis that the original appeal was meant to solve is now accelerating at a terrifying pace. The public backlash is transforming from online commentary into organized, widespread demonstrations of support for the institutional rigidity displayed by King Charles and Prince William. Crowds outside the gates of Buckingham Palace have grown larger, with citizens openly celebrating what they perceive as a long-overdue defense of the public treasury and the dignity of the crown. This overwhelming wave of public solidarity has effectively insulated the royal family from the predictable accusations of cruelty and discrimination that have traditionally been launched by international commentators. The narrative of institutional survival has completely triumphed over the narrative of personal grievance. Inside the private quarters of the king, the atmosphere is described not as triumphant, but as one of profound, somber finality. Charles has reportedly refused to receive any further briefings regarding the media chaos, choosing instead to focus entirely on his immediate state duties and upcoming international tours. The permanent alignment between the King and the Prince of Wales has created an unyielding, unified front that ensures the future transition of power will be built on a foundation of absolute, uncompromising structural stability. The era of open-ended family negotiations is officially, completely, and irrevocably over. Now, as the finality of this historic rejection settles over the entire global landscape, the real power behind this moment stands completely revealed. The British monarchy did not just reject a piece of paper. It permanently redefined the boundaries of its survival in the modern era, proving that it is fully prepared to sacrifice personal relationships to preserve the absolute integrity of the crown. The human cost of this decision will continue to ripple through private rooms in California and public corridors in London for decades to come, but the institutional outcome is completely locked in stone. The door is shut, the key has been thrown away, and the palace has officially moved beyond the point of no return. What do you think about this absolute, history-making showdown between the King and Meghan Markle? Did Charles make the right choice by permanently slamming the door shut on these extravagant demands? Or do you think the palace should have left a small pathway open for future family reconciliation? How do you think this devastating rejection will impact the long-term survival of the Sussex brand in America, now that their ultimate marketing tool has been completely stripped away? Let me know your exact thoughts and theories in the comments section below, because this is a developing story that is changing the world in real time. Before you head down to the comment section to share your perspective on this massive palace scandal, make sure to hit that like button right now, share this video with every single royal enthusiast you know, and click that subscribe button to join our community. Turn on all notifications so you never miss another breaking, highly classified update from inside the hidden world of the British royal family. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for our next investigative breakdown as the global fallout continues to unfold. This historic showdown between the British monarchy and Meghan Markle has officially changed the rules of the game forever. King Charles III has drawn an absolute line in the sand, proving that institutional survival will always come before personal family compromise. But now the real question belongs to you. Do you think the king made the right choice by permanently slamming the door shut on these extravagant demands, or should the palace have left a small pathway open for future reconciliation? How do you think this devastating rejection will impact the long-term survival of the Sussex brand in America, now that their ultimate royal connection has been completely severed? Let us know your exact thoughts, theories, and reactions in the comments section below. Before you share your perspective on this massive palace scandal, make sure to hit that like button right now to support our channel. Share this video across all your social media platforms so your friends can join the debate. Most importantly, click that subscribe button right now and turn on all post notifications. By joining our community today, you ensure that you will never miss another breaking, highly classified update from inside the hidden world of the royal family. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you in the next one.